This is CBC Here and Now.
A lot of us are leaving this job. I myself am leaving within the next couple of months.
Unfortunately, we have an employer who's money driven, and the bottom line is the bottom of the story, and the human factor really doesn't come into play here.
Ambulance workers on strike. Paramedics hold protests in the province while politicians continue working on legislation to get them back on the job.
Keeping recyclables out of the landfill was really important.
Clear garbage bags have been a staple in St. John's households for a year now, but has the switch in color made a difference? Here and Now's Henrika Wilhelm will have the answer coming up.
Doesn't really hit me yet that the house is gone.
Well, this woman has this dog to thank for saving their lives after their home caught fire. Now friends are helping them rebuild their lives. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. Well, the debate is still underway at the House of Assembly at this hour over whether private ambulance operators should be essential workers. Government brought MHAs together for a rare January sitting. Here and Now's Peter Cowan is here to explain it to us. So Peter, what does this legislation do?
Well, Carolyn, right now they are sitting. Unusual to have it in January and unusual to have it this late. Let's show you a live look at the legislature right now.
We're at a point of doing something that needs to be done in the best interest of healthcare in this province and the best interest of the workers here. For fair wages.
And that is interim PC leader David Brazel there speaking to this legislation. And it's very unusual for government to try and pass a piece of legislation in one day, but that's what they're planning to do, sitting well into the night. Government says it's an emergency because ambulances are off the road, so they want to make the ambulance workers essential, which would put a pause on the strike. The Premier says the stopgap measures they put in place when workers walked off the job on Friday is putting strain on other areas of the healthcare system.
While they can provide contingency in the short term, I don't think it's fair to continue stressing those hard workers and those people on the front lines while we have a mechanism to allow for essential workers across private and public services.
So let's break down what this legislation does. So once it's passed, the strike is essentially on pause. Before they could go back on the picket lines, the unionized workers would have to have an essential workers agreement with the employer, which lays out which workers are needed to keep the ambulance services running. And those workers couldn't strike. Now, if they can't agree on that, the Labor Relations Board can settle that. So if they can't strike, how will they be able to put pressure on Feuer's Ambulance to get a deal? Well, the Labor Relations Board can send this to arbitration, where a third party hears both sides and imposes an agreement. Now, normally unions are against a move like this being legislated off the picket lines, but the union here says this is something they actually want.
This employer, he has continuously refused to negotiate. He's snubbed his nose at the government and the procedures that have been laid out. The binding arbitration, we feel, is the only way we're going to get any satisfaction from this employer and get a collective agreement negotiated.
So the union expects this legislation to pass, and they said they'd, in fact, as a show of good faith, be willing to restore emergency services this afternoon. But the union says they couldn't reach an agreement with the company to do that, so they're going to have to wait for the bill to pass, and it's then given royal assent. If you're wondering why is this debate happening so late in the day, well, it was the NDP that delayed this. The NDP leader said before taking away someone's right to strike, they wanted time to read the bill in detail, and the final version was only handed to them this morning. This sitting could go as late as midnight tonight. Reporting live from the newsroom, I'm Peter Cowan for Here and Now.
Well, still with this story, while politicians and labor leaders were arguing over essential service legislation today, striking first responders who work for a private ambulance service and their supporters were gathering at Confederation Building. As Here and Now's Terry Roberts reports, those on the front lines are deeply frustrated and say major change is needed.
A lot of us are leaving this job.
That's exactly what paramedic Emily White is doing. She'll finish her training as a registered nurse in a few months, and her 6 years with Feuer's ambulance service will come to an end. She looks forward to more stability.
I know with another job, I have a pension, I'll have retirement plans, and I'll get paid for every hour I work.
White is one of more than 100 Feuer's ambulance service employees who went on strike on Friday, frustrated at their rate of pay, What they say are substandard benefits, long hours of work, and a health system that's buckling.
Love the job, but the politics, not getting paid for doing 72 or 48-hour shifts, only getting paid 11.43 hours for 24-hour shifts. It's not right.
You wouldn't believe how many have left to gone into nursing because it's and I know nurses have their own problems, but they're a lot more stable.
Emily White is part of an exodus of workers from the sector, and veteran paramedic Jennifer Dooley says there's very little incentive to stay.
I'm broke up, and what do I have to show for it when I retire? I'm going to get the same pension as someone on social services or working minimum wage at a corner store.
So it's led to this: ambulances that should be ready to respond snowed under, and politicians scrambling to enact legislation that will ensure those in need of medical care will get it.
We're looking for our future. This job, a lot of people get hurt. A lot of people mentally and physically don't last long in this job. We just want retirement. We want better pay. We just want what everyone else is getting in other jobs.
Just before I went off, was responding to a call from Brigus to Topsail Road in St. John's for a chest pain. Because we're so short-staffed, because we can't get anybody to come to work, because nobody wants to work these hours for the wages. There's no pension.
These workers say there is a solution. Bring those working for private ambulance services on par with their peers in the public sector, shoulder to shoulder, just like they were today outside the province's seat of power. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
And the demonstration by first responders wasn't limited to St. John's. Some of the strikers stepped things up a notch in Gander. They held a protest outside the James Patton Regional Health Centre this afternoon. Most were from the town, but they were also joined by their colleagues from other communities like Boyd's Cove and Fogo in a show of solidarity.
Well, all that snow that fell this weekend kind of turned into cement this morning as those temperatures were fairly chilly out there across the province. But we do have a warm up on the way and also, unfortunately, some rain. So hopefully you got the chance to get out and enjoy the weather this weekend. We've got a ridge of high pressure in place up across Labrador, but our next weather maker is just on the doorstep now. As far as the rain is concerned, we've been seeing snow on the west coast for a good chunk of the afternoon today, but that is about to change to rain as we start to see some of this milder air move in, and we can already see that along the southern portion of the island. That the edge of the rain is starting to move onshore, and will continue to do so as we head through the evening hours tonight. Environment Canada has a rainfall warning in effect from Burgeo all the way through to the southern Avalon, as well as a wreck house wind warning. Winds are a concern with this. We will see some gusts even in close to the Avalon, somewhere between 80 to 100 kilometers per hour. And the model's doing a pretty good job as far as timing out this rain for us. We'll see some heavy rain through the overnight, some snow for the northern peninsula and southeastern Labrador. Get into the details coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, now to the Burin Peninsula. A house fire in St. Lawrence on Saturday morning has left a family looking for a place to live. As Here and Now's Sarah Antle reports, the family dog is the hero of this story after he alerted the family that something was very wrong.
When their dog Jake started jumping on their bed just after 5 o'clock on Saturday morning, Emma and Derek Curtis didn't think much of it. But he continued to push, even going into their son's room and jumping on his bed. Around that time, Derek Curtis was getting up to go plow snow after the storm, and his wife asked him to check out why the dog was making so much noise.
So he went on outside to check to see what it was, and 5 minutes later he was back in, get out, get out, get out, she's a fire, call the fire department.
They scrambled to get dressed as she called the fire department. He moved the cars so the fire trucks could get through. It took about 5 minutes for the fire trucks to arrive, but she says those minutes felt like forever.
Hit me yet that the house is gone. We have been up there a couple of times, but I can't stay in it. It's just too hard at the moment.
It turns out an upstairs heater had caught on fire. The family doesn't have house insurance. They said it was too expensive with only one income. Kayla Lake is a friend of the family. As soon as she heard about their loss, Lake knew she wanted to do something to help them and immediately set up a 50-50 fundraising draw.
Emma and Derek, they're two people that will do absolutely anything for anyone. So, it felt like to me that was my part for me to step in and help them get back on their feet in any way possible.
For now, the family is staying in their friend's apartment until they can find a new place to live. And while she is struggling with the loss, she says they're all alive, and that's what matters.
Our son's in St. John's, the rest is just material, Mom, as long as you're okay.
And Curtis says all the support they are getting is overwhelming and helps make it just a little bit easier. For CBC News, I'm Sarah Antle, St. John's.
Well, police say an underwater recovery team was still searching today for a man believed to have gone over a cliff while on an ATV. 41-year-old Troy Blay was reported missing early Saturday morning. The RCMP say he was last seen 3 days earlier in the Blue Beach area of the Port-au-Port Peninsula. A search was started, and the all-terrain vehicle was found a short time later at the bottom of a cliff in Black Duck Brook. There's also a fatality to tell you about tonight involving a snowmobile. It happened on the Northern Peninsula. A 46-year-old man was reported overdue Saturday afternoon when he didn't arrive home from the cabin. Local residents began searching, and less than an hour later, they found the man deceased in open water near Anchor Point. His machine was also in the water. Well, it's been 1 year since St. John's residents had to be transparent with their garbage. Quite literally, the city's clear garbage bag mandate came into effect last January. Here Now's Enrica Wilhelm has an update on how the implementation and enforcement went and whether the move actually made a difference to recycling rates.
Having less of this, going here was one of the goals the city of St. John's had when it switched to clear garbage bags.
There was progress made immediately, like 500 more tons of recycling than we used to get, and that's a lot because it's pretty light stuff. So that's significant reduction in both cost and tipping fees, of course, and also it's a huge benefit to the environment.
It's a big step. The city had already invested efforts in voluntary recycling, and you go around on garbage day and you'll see a lot of blue bags around, but definitely we need this. We need everybody doing this.
The clear garbage bag mandate came into effect in St. John's on January 1st, 2022. That means only 4 clear bags allowed per week, or 3 clear bags and 1 opaque privacy bag.
The majority, if not everyone, has seen the value of this and understand how it works. So when we're downtown and there's no bins for the garbage, it's quite easy for the collector to see what's in the garbage, and if there's recycling mixed in, they will put a sticker on that. And now we've been doing this long enough that I have seen bags left behind, and people understand that they made a mistake and they correct it.
Yet some say more needs to be done, like making more plastics recyclable or even moving from recycling to reusing.
Around 78% of plastics that are coming into our houses are not recyclable. And that's a huge problem because it's known that recycling, it's also a fragile industry. Everything depends on the market of who needs the plastic, how much they're paying for the plastic. We realized how bad this was when China banned the import of plastics. And then North America and some European countries realized that they had no market, and they started landfilling the plastic.
That's why Ramirez Luna says it's important to look at the big picture. She says it's up to the manufacturing industry to rethink packaging and to governments to implement more regulations. Henrike Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, in some sports news, the Canada Games are less than a month away, and the snowboard team from Newfoundland and Labrador is making history. Here Now's Daryl Din spoke with 2 team members at the Smoky Mountain Ski Club in Western Labrador. Have a look.
Well, it is the very first snowboard team to be traveling for the province of Newfoundland and Labrador to Canada Games. So we're pretty much making history, and we're sending both a full male and full female team.
Because this is going to be the first year for snowboarding in the Canada Games for Team NL. First time we're sending a team, so it's really amazing to be a part of history and to be representing Labrador West for that.
I'm happy and I'm super proud to represent Smoky Mountain.
Elizabeth is an extremely talented female rider. She's been riding most of her life, typically coached by her mother, who is also a snowboarder, and is one of the Canada Games female snowboard coaches.
And re-entering into your turn,
yeah,
you get it 2 Where's two further?
Okay.
I'm one of the coach. We have one coach here and another coach in the island.
And how's it been preparing when the team members are all across the province?
We all prepare, like we meet together on team meeting, and we all train from different stations because of like we're away, but we all train on your own and get prepared for the game to be together. I really hope them to catch the experience of being like part of the provincial team, and it's pretty great that even if we're like away from the big center, we can get athletes that perform at that level.
Just get on a board. It's so much fun, and you know, if you really like it and you really want to take it to the next step, like do it 100%. It's so worth it. So worth it.
Well, the Newfoundland Rogues' winning ways from last year have carried over into the team's second season. As we told you on Friday, the lone pro basketball team in the city is back on the court in a new league, and even the snow couldn't slow them down. Yes, this weekend series against the Raleigh Firebirds started Friday night at the Mary Brown Centre, with the home team being introduced to the 1,500 fans in attendance. Despite a slow start, the Rogues managed to dose the Firebirds 104-98. With snow falling hard around the Avalon Peninsula, the two teams and about 600 fans braved the stormy weather on Saturday for the second game of the back-to-back showdown. Fans got to see the Rogues win again, 124-121 over the North Carolina team. And if you include last season, which was shortened due to COVID, the Rogues have now won 9 games in a row. The team is back at the Mary Brown Centre on Wednesday, where they'll face the London Lightning.
Did have an emergency here today and had to wait for an ambulance to come from another place.
Well, this mayor is worried about the impact of the strike by some first responders, but she's also concerned about the future of ambulance service in her community. That story is coming up.
Well, we've got rainfall warnings for the South Coast, and we have snowfall warnings for southeastern portions of Labrador. I'll tell you what to expect coming up.
And some say vinyl is king, but that's not stopping a much cherished radio station from selling off part of its vast collection of LPs. We'll find out why later in the show.
This weather forecast has been brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. Whatever you're up for this winter, discover experience packages at winterupnl.ca.
Well, what a wild weekend weather-wise. It started snowing and then it just kept going and going and going.
Yes, it did. Yeah, take a look at some of what the Avalon saw. Well, most of the Avalon really saw this. Lots of snow plows working. We woke up to about 20 centimeters in the morning. We saw a bit of a lull in the afternoon. And then that's when we really started to get into some of the heavier snow. Now, lots of flights were canceled, unfortunately, because of the weather. We also saw lots of closures. Avalon Mall was one of them, and lots of other places as well. But how much snow actually fell? Well, we saw pretty much, it was well forecasted really at the end of the day. Kilbride, unofficial report, but Kilbride saw about 61 centimeters of snow. Paradise just below that. Again, all of these numbers fairly unofficial, about 59 centimeters, but the airport recorded officially 49.4 centimeters of snow. And as you can see through CBS, Whitburn, those numbers just a little bit less than that. And then certainly once we got even towards Bay Roberts, so just the northwest Avalon, between around 21.6 centimeters, again unofficial, but still a good report. And then St. Lawrence, about 18 centimeters of snow. So it was nice while it lasted, at least. It will be nice while it lasted because those temperatures are already up above zero today, but 1 degree in St. John's. Everything was kind of caked in that snow, and we're starting to see some of that snow melt and fall. So beware of that if you're headed out tonight to enjoy the milder air. But about 0 degrees in Gander today. Same thing for Corner Brook. Temperatures along the south coast, daytime highs around 2 to 3 degrees, and they're just going to continue to rise as we head through the overnight tonight. Much different story though up across Labrador. Temperatures somewhere between -7 and -10 as the daytime high. So what we got going on right now is an area of low pressure heading across the Maritimes right now, bringing some snow to the west coast and eventually some rain along the south coast. Things are already starting to ramp up, but you can see those temperatures. So their daytime highs we're reaching them now, and we'll continue to reach them as we head through the overnight tonight. But right now hovering around the 0 degree mark through parts of central, west coast, northern peninsula, a little cooler than that. And then those temperatures up across Labrador are sitting somewhere between -7 and -13 overnight, and some wind chill being recorded as well. But look at the temperatures as we head through the overnight tonight. Fairly chilly, down to the -20s for a good chunk of the Big Land, about -14 for Lab City overnight tonight. You'll see some snow move in. But temperatures across the island, they're not really going to move too much from where they are now. In fact, they're going to rise, and everything is going to change over to rain as we head through into the early morning hours. So just taking a look at the current satellite and radar for the west coast, we can see that changing over to rain as we speak along the south coast, and then the radar picking up on some rain as well across parts of eastern Newfoundland, particularly the Burin Peninsula and along the southern Avalon. Now it is also picking up on some mixing and or snow. There's a good chance this will start as snow, and then eventually as that warmer air really moves in, it will transition through to rain. And the model's doing a great job on picking that up, including the metro area tonight. We may see that as well, but it will change right over to heavy rain through the overnight. And we'll see that head further north as we head past midnight, and then eventually into the early morning hours. Now, northern peninsula, you'll stay as rain for the most part. Green Bay, White Bay, snow. Green Bay, White Bay, your transition won't be until the early morning hour, and this will be a snow event for southeastern Labrador. You're not going to quite get into that before the low pulls off as far as that snow is concerned. Now, how much are we expecting as we head into the overnight? We're looking at the rainfall amounts fairly significant along the south coast, but we're also looking at some gusty winds as well. By the time we get into, say, 10, 11 o'clock tonight, most areas will be seeing those winds gusting between 60 to 80 kilometers per hour, even more so for eastern Newfoundland, between 80 to 100. If we do see those wind gusts, this will be the time period we do. And then by the time we get into the morning hours, by Tuesday morning anyway, We're talking between 60 to 80 kilometers per hour. We'll see those ramp right back up again into the afternoon on Tuesday. So we'll tell you how much snow to expect, how much rain to expect when I come back.
Well, the current ambulance strike could be just the beginning of a healthcare problem for people in Trepassey. Residents there are also worried about losing the ambulance service permanently. The mayor of Trepassey is here to tell us more. Rita Pennell, thanks so much for making time for us. Can you start by telling us what the mood was like over the weekend in the town after the strike began on Friday?
Well, you know, the people here are mostly seniors. And we had a big storm here the weekend. And if something happened the weekend, an outside ambulance wasn't going to come through our countries, because we have a country on both sides of us. And you can't see your hand in those countries when there's a storm on. So the people here, the paramedics weren't allowed to work. So, you know, they were on strike. So we didn't have anybody to turn to on the weekend.
The storm is over, but are people still worried about potentially needing those ambulance services?
Well, you know, this is a life and death situation, because we did have an emergency here today and had to wait for an ambulance to come from another place. So, you know, the people, when you're sick, you know, every hour means a long time.
And can you talk about why there's concern now that the service may be permanently cut in your area?
Well, I had a call from Mr. Bob Fewer, the employer, last Tuesday, the 17th, and he told me that he had put notice in the week before to the department that in 180 days he'd be taking the ambulance out of Trepassey.
So in 6 months, you'll be losing that service permanently, he said.
Now, and we always had 2 subsidies here in Trepassey until the 4th of October 2021. And they took 1 ambulance out of Trepassey. And like the Minister of Health at that time, Dr. John Hagee, what he said to our MHA was, that's what the employer wanted. So the government, they took away the need of the people over the greed of a businessman. Totally excusable decision on the part of the government.
Can you talk about the reasons Bob Fewer gave you for wanting to cancel the ambulance service there in 6 months' time?
Well, he told me they were only, now that there's only 1 ambulance, and he said that they're only averaging about 3 trips a week. Which was wrong. I don't know where the trips were, but the ambulance was gone every day during Christmas and every day the first week of January. And like when they leave Trepassey, you're talking about 2 hours out and 2 back. But sometimes they have problems with offloading. So they're always gone 7 or 8 hours. So every time they were gone, we were in red alert, and we had ambulances from other places. We even had, after having ambulances up here, the fall from the health signs.
And what are your concerns? What are your fears about what could happen if the ambulance service is cut permanently?
Well, you know what's going to happen. You're going to have people dying in the back seat of cars. That happened back years and years ago, back in the 50s and 60s. So this is 2023. So you'd be expecting better service. And anyway, the Fewers had a contract for this area, and they were paid subsidies. Whether the ambulance moved or didn't, they were still paid money.
What do you think the solution is here? What would you like to see happen next?
Well, I think that's that had to be up to the government. The government had to rule all of this, because plus, I mean, those paramedics here in the area are not paid the same as the Eastern Health ones. But if me and you go to school together and we train together and we do the same work, and I'm in Trepassey and you're in St. John's, I think everybody should be paid the same money. And you would have no problem getting staff anywhere if you were paying them the same money as the health signs.
Well, Mayor Rita Pennell, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
And thank you so much.
Well, there is a treasure trove for vinyl lovers here at VOWR. Hundreds and hundreds of records are going to be up for grabs at a fundraiser this Saturday. We'll tell you all about it coming up. Well, there is nothing like the sound of a record, and here at VOWR, vinyl is king. Coming up this Saturday, the radio station plans to sell off some of its vast collection, and joining me now to talk more about that is Ron LeDrew, the manager here. So Ron, can you start by telling us a bit about VOWR, what you do here?
Well, I tell you, VOWR has been around a long time. It's been 99 years, and next year it's going to be the 100th year. 1924, Reverend Joyce, the United Church minister at the time, decided that he wanted to get the church services out to the general public who could not attend services. So his idea was to open up a radio station, and at that time we were called 8WMC, and that was changed sometime in the 30s, and now we are the voice of Wesley Radio, VOWR. Mostly we play easy listening music for our listeners, not only in the province but around the world. We're on the internet as well.
So what we see behind you here, this is the collection that's in the regular rotation on radio, right?
Yes, indeed, and we still play a lot of records here at VOWR, even though we're into technology as well with digital, but we play a lot of records and we play a lot of CDs. We have a couple of country programs especially that our listeners like old country. And this is where the old country is. It's on vinyl. And even though I think you may be able to get it on digital, it's not the same.
And why is it not the same?
Well, I tell you, it's these recordings, and I've often heard that when you listen to a vinyl record, it's entirely different than listening to a song that's digitized. And they tell us that, but I think it's true. Well, I tell you, it's making a comeback. Vinyl is getting very popular with the new generation, and maybe part of the reason why we decided that we'd like to share some of our library with the residents of the province, and that's why we got involved with the Lions Fair, the Lions Vinyl Fair that's coming up on Saturday. We have a lot of albums and we have a lot of CDs, and we'll go from Johnny Rivers to Engelbert Humperdinck to Dolly Parton to Mario Lanza. You know, we'll pretty well have them all for sale on Saturday.
How many records are we talking about here?
Well, it's pretty well going to be in the hundreds. We can't really say how many, but we'll have a couple of hundreds. That's going to be going up for sale, plus some CDs as well.
So what kind of person do you think would be interested in going to the Lion Chalet and sorting through and looking through what you have on offer?
Well, you know, we have individuals that love records, and turntables are in style again. And so we'll see a lot of people turn out like that. We'll see a lot of people that, and you know, the vendors are going to be there as well, and they buy and sell the various records and CDs. So, but there's more interest in records right now in the general public.
So hundreds of records you're going to be selling off. Do you think you'll be able to get rid of them all in a day?
Well, I think we will, and you know something, we may even give away a few. On Saturday. It depends, but we're looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be a good fair, and it's for a good cause for the Lions Club up at the Lions Chalet. So we're all looking forward to that.
Well, Ron LeDrew, good luck with the sale on Saturday. Thank you so much for telling us about it.
Well, thank you for dropping by.
Spotify is the latest tech company to announce job cuts. The music streaming service says it's chopping 600 jobs, or about 6% of its global workforce. The Stockholm-based company says it's restructuring itself in a bid to bring costs more into line. Big tech companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google have announced tens of thousands of job cuts this month as the post-pandemic economic outlook weakens. More news coming up. Well, sometimes the most in-demand toys on the market aren't created for every child to play with. And that's why a group of volunteers in Charlottetown got together to try to make some toys adaptive for people with disabilities. The CBC's Stacey Janzer has more.
For people with disabilities, playing with toys off the shelf can be difficult. Small buttons can be hard to work when people have limited motor skills. A nonprofit group works to make it easier. It holds events like this where people come together and learn to alter toys.
I'm excited to work with wires.
12-year-old Rachel Matheson, her friend and her sister came to STEAM PEI to learn to do this work. STEAM PEI is a nonprofit that works to get young islanders to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, or math, known as STEM. The event provides low-cost toys that can be easily used by children with disabilities. They worked on turning a plush puppy that moves with a small switch into one that can be used by a large button.
One of the main ways that we do that is by events like this, where we get a bunch of people in the room, we give them instructions, parts, tools to do it, and they sit down and build a bunch of stuff for us that we can then give them to the community, to people who need them.
Cameron says buying adaptive toys is expensive, with up to a 300% markup. She says she bought a $20 toy and adapted it, later finding the same toy already altered selling for $120.
The toys that we're doing today, the Switch adapted toys, they can be really difficult for families to find, and toys are such a big part of kids' lives and being able to play and develop. So our ability to adapt some of these toys and then give them to kids who need them just fills a really huge void that there is.
Amber Jadis, CEO of STEAM PEI, says the partnership is a perfect fit, allowing people a chance to help others while learning STEM.
We heard a lot about them from Makers Making Change this morning about how expensive the commercially bought adaptive toys are, and how a group of volunteers can make those at a much more cost-effective in a much more cost-effective way, and learning the skills and getting to solder and getting to take apart toys and see how they work.
People who are interested in learning how to make or receive adaptive toys can reach out to the Makers Making Change website. A little free time and some tools can make a difference for people with disabilities. Stacey Janzer, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Sunwing Airlines is cutting some flights from 3 maritime airports to sunny destinations. Earlier this month, the company canceled scheduled departures from a few other Canadian cities. Brett Ruskin looks at how that's leaving vacation plans for many up in the air.
Getting away from this wet maritime weather is a little bit more difficult now with Sunwing's cuts to its service. The latest cuts affecting Halifax, Fredericton, Moncton. For example, Halifax currently has 2 weekly flights down to Veradero, Cuba on Sunwing planes. That is being cut down to just 1 weekly flight as of mid-February. This joins the long list of cities that have seen Sunwing service cut. We're looking at Regina, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, North Bay, Sudbury as well, all seeing reductions in service for Sunwing. These cuts actually took place about 2 weeks ago. We're just starting to hear about them now from various travelers. Travelers had been told, hey, listen, you had booked flights previously, months ago perhaps. Those flights will no longer be happening. We'll give you a refund for these flights and you can rebook your service. Customers and clients and these travelers have, for the most part, said that they are frustrated, but to a certain degree understanding, because they are receiving refunds and there was that huge influx in both volume of travelers in that holiday period, but also issues encountered by airlines, including Sunwing. But many travelers are finding that even though they get their money refunded, that they still have to figure out plans to perhaps change dates, which might be difficult when you're booking things down south. For example, theme parks, Disney, you have that non-refundable ticket perhaps. Also, flights to book now are certainly going to be more expensive than they were perhaps months ago. So just the latest round of cuts for Sunwing Airlines. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
Authorities are searching for a motive in the mass shooting at a dance hall near Los Angeles on Saturday. 11 people died and several were injured after a gunman opened fire during Lunar New Year celebrations. A makeshift memorial has been set up outside the venue. A 72-year-old suspect was found dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound on Sunday. Police say he tried to attack a second dance hall nearby, but a man disarmed him before he fled the scene. Authorities say he may have been a patron of the first dance hall he targeted, which is a popular local spot in the older Asian American community. The attack is the deadliest in the U.S. since the school shootings in Uvalde, Texas in May. Senior members of the Trudeau government have gathered in Hamilton for a 3-day cabinet retreat. On the agenda is a list of pressing issues Prime Minister and his inner circle will be discussing. David Cochrane looks at the priorities for the Liberals before the House of Commons returns next week.
And it's all to go today?
Yes, please.
Awesome.
Whenever the cabinet goes on the road, the Prime Minister likes to make his presence known. And so a lunch stop at a local restaurant as Justin Trudeau and his cabinet kick off a 3-day retreat in Hamilton. Hi there. The high cost of living, especially for things like food, are at the top of the agenda as Trudeau and his ministers finalize their plans for the upcoming budget. The cabinet will hold high-level discussions on the state of the economy with the hope that interest rates have hit their peak and any downturn in growth or the job market will be short and shallow. They will also take stock of the state of their political arrangement with the NDP, the confidence and supply agreement that is supposed to run until 2025, so long as the Liberals live up to their end of the bargain. The Liberals have met the first test of expanding dental care. The next step is to make progress on pharmacare.
I hope we'll have some progress soon. There's been a lot of progress over the weekend. I've had a number of conversations with premiers again over the weekend.
But of more immediate concern is striking a deal with the premiers on health funding. Over the past week, sources at all levels have reported progress on a deal. The framework is an across-the-board increase in health transfers, backstopped by a series of one-on-one deals to meet the specific needs of each province and territory. The plan is to seal the deal at a First Minister's meeting. The question is when.
I'm optimistic that we're making progress, and at the right moment, as the Prime Minister has always said, he'll sit down with his fellow First Ministers.
While the precise timing of that First Minister's meeting isn't known, the premiers have been pushing for a face-to-face before the middle of February. The goal is to get money into a stressed system as soon as possible and get a long-term commitment on health care funding by the federal budget. David Cochrane, CBC News, Hamilton.
Well, Canadians know that the damage from post-tropical storm Fiona was bad, but seeing is believing. New drone footage reveals the extent of the damage in Prince Edward Island. The data gathered from it could help residents and government officials protect the shoreline in the future. Nancy Russell explains.
Andy McDonald and Luke Malash packed up their drones here at the Canadian Centre for Climate Change and Adaptation and hit the road as soon as they could after Fiona. What they saw from the drone was widespread damage to PEI's coastline.
It was kind of heart-wrenching. You'd show up to places, there'd be empty foundations, you'd be driving along the coast and you'd see the wreckage of someone's house washed up. There'd be huge stretches of coastal road where we'd drive before, and now there's no road.
Crews from the UPEI Climate Lab have been monitoring PEI's coastline since 2016 and have never seen erosion like this.
And in that time, the largest losses we've seen, which were very rare, were in the 5-meter loss areas. But after this storm, we've seen areas with more than 10 meters lost, sustained over an area which we've never seen before and which we've never seen in the historical records either. So yeah, just very shocking.
The drone crew made it to more than 25 locations around PEI. They usually monitor more than 100, so there will be more flights to come in the spring. And they expect damage from Fiona is going to change their work moving forward.
More people are going to be interested. They'll see that, hey, this area was hit really hard. Can you add somewhere there? And hopefully we can oblige with that.
The information the UPEI crew is gathering will be shared with the provincial government. It is used to make decisions about coastal development and preparing for climate change.
I think that as an island made of sandstone, figuring out a way to protect our coastlines is important.
For now, the drone crew will spend the winter doing a deep dive into the data they gathered in 2022, including the damage from Fiona. Nancy Russell, CBC News, St. Peters Bay.
little bigger and bigger, and then just kept adding more and more stuff to it, and yeah, kind of maybe got a little out of hand, but.
Well, Spencer Zimmer put in more than 40 hours to build this backyard ice rink in Camrose, Alberta. It's 15 meters long and 10 meters wide, and it's become a haven for skaters and curlers alike in the community. Many hockey tournaments, curling bonspiels, and holiday parties have been taking place here all winter. Even the curling stones are homemade, along with a custom Zamboni built to keep the ice in top shape. We'll be back with Ashley's long-range forecast coming up. Well, in Amsterdam today, thousands of people marked National Tulip Day. In spectacular fashion, they flocked to a square to pick flowers for their own gardens. Yes, the area was filled with more than 200,000 tulip bulbs. Oh, heaven. Almost 20,000 people showed up, and each one was allowed to pick as many as 20 tulips for free. Most of the flowers were gone in less than 3 hours. My goodness, we have a ways to go here in this province before we get to see a sight like that with the tulips coming up out of the ground. Makes me crave spring already.
You've got a long time to wait.
Yeah. So looking at the long range forecast, you've been talking about some rain. That's probably going to put a little bit of a dent in all the snow.
It certainly will. Let's just break that down for you because I didn't get to show you this a little bit earlier. But that is, yeah, the rain's definitely going to put a dent in the snow. So as we head through the next couple of hours, we'll start to see that rain, well, the snow push further north, but then transition through to rain. We could pick up a couple centimeters on the Avalon before that changes over, and then through parts of central and the west coast, we're looking at closer to 5 to 10 before we start to see that transition through to rain. But most of the south coast, that's where we're going to see the heaviest rain, somewhere between 30 to 50 millimeters, definitely not out of the question by the time we get into Tuesday morning. And then we head north to the northern peninsula and southeastern portions of Labrador. That's where we'll see the majority of the snow. Somewhere between 10 to as much as 20 centimeters possible by the time we get into early Wednesday morning. So as far as Wednesday is concerned, that snow will push off eventually into the afternoon for coastal areas of Labrador. Then we'll get into that onshore flurry activity for the west coast. That will continue through a good chunk of the day. Otherwise, we should actually see some sun across the island. Temperatures are going to head back down below zero for the most part, 0 to about -4, and then much colder up across Labrador, -20s for Lab City. As you head towards the coast, though, about -10 to -12 as your daytime high. Through Wednesday evening into Thursday, our next weather maker starts to move in. We'll see some snow associated with this one as well, especially up across the Big Land, but that will change over to rain again for a good chunk of the west coast, south coast, and eastern Newfoundland. Temperatures will be hovering between 0 and about -2 through the day, and temperatures into the -teens for Labrador. 5-day forecast looking like that, back up above 0 on Friday. Same thing for central and western Newfoundland. As you see, back down below 0 as we head into Saturday. And then for the north coast, at least, those temperatures will be in the minus single-digit range, and then some sunshine, where western Labrador, you will hover around -12. Just before we leave you tonight, I had to share this shot. It's a great photo of a sunrise in Bay Bulls today. Tom Bruce shared that one with us. If you have any weather photos, send them to Facebook, Twitter, or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Oh, beautiful. It was a real weekend to take pictures.
Sure
For
was.
I took a lot of my backyard. That's it for us. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us.
Good night.